Hi, thanks a lot for the time. Can you see right now my presentation? Is everything
Yes, your
fine?
presentation is
Okay.
visible. Yeah.
Okay, so thanks a lot. I will talk about how unlocking supply chain efficiency with the use of generative AI and with technology right now. Is more about how to apply this technology in the supply chain world. Okay, so first of all, it's important to understand how supply chain works. We
Jackie, let's
have
go,
three
Baba.
flows. We have three flows and three flows of uh, of things that happens in the supply chain. The first one is about information flow. We need to know about what our customers want, how our suppliers can can provide us with raw materials, and how our producers can transfer those raw materials. So the first thing is about that, and then the other thing that is really important to know is when we are going to get paid for sending products to the market. In all this process, we have an information flow, and it's the most important part of the supply chain to manage that information flow. If we have some problems in our information flow, then we are going to have problems in our supply chain. One clear example about that was the sales of toilet paper in the whole world during the pandemic. Suddenly, toilet paper disappeared and was a problem about information flow. Why? Because people start buying toilet papers and supermarkets, and then they start see other people doing the same, and then they start thinking that they were going to run away from toilet paper, so sales increase and production stays pretty much the same. It's always about information flows that can disrupt the supply chain. So the idea is to see how we can apply technology and artificial intelligence to solve this problem. Okay, so one thing that we need to have in mind is that the future supply chain will have end-to-end transparency. That means that that information flow will work a lot faster. It will be a lot better. But the idea is to know how to use technology to improve that information flow. In the planning part, in the logistic, production, procurement, and in the marketing and sales, how we are going to apply that. And the first thing is to have a clear view how the supply chain work and what is supply chain, but actually it's not supply chain, but how everything connects inside the company. If we see this, we have a complete supply chain system in there. We have the yellow part that is the corporative strategy and the business plan. That is not supply chain. That is the strategy of the company. Nevertheless, the supply chain would try to accomplish that, the business plan of the company. The business plan is what we want to do, and the supply chain is how we are going to do it. So you can see the yellow part is what we want to do, and the blue part actually is the supply chain, is how we are going to do it. And how we're going to do it is by following three steps. The first step is about sales and operation planning, is try to define what people want, define the demand in the market, define how much we can provide in the market. The second part is about a master production schedule and a master schedule to have a clear idea of how we're going to do things inside the company, how we are going to produce things inside the company. And the third part is about a master requirement plan, is about what we need to accomplish this plan. So we are going to use technology in those three parts, and we are going to see how we can apply that in the supply chain. We have a third part of this picture that is in red, that actually is the execution of that plan. That means the purchase order, work orders, and the control of everything related to that. Is not actually a supply chain. It's more about the execution of the supply chain. Is more related with operations and logistics. But nevertheless, we can use technology in there too. So we're going to see right now how to use technology in each part of the supply chain and each part that is related to the supply chain. First, we're going to see this in the strategic level, how technology can help us to work with this. First, we have the corporate strategy, and we have the business plan. How generative AI will help us is to identify risk patterns and trends that actually is happening in the system, but we don't have the ability to create models, mathematical models, to try to analyze the information that we are getting from the market and from inside the company. So the idea is to take proactive measures to reduce that risk. And most of the time, the information that we are getting outside of the company and from inside the company, we don't have the ability to transport that information in better decision. And sometimes we just get data that are more difficult to manage inside the supply chain. So one thing that is important to have in mind is that around 80% of all the data that we get in our companies and that we can use in the supply chain is not used. So why is not used all that data is because most of that data is unstructured data, and some of those data are semi-structured data. And for that reason, it's really difficult for us in companies and in organizations to take that information, to take that data, to take that data and transport that information to take decisions. So with artificial intelligence and generative AI, we have the opportunity to start checking that data, reading different types of data, and trying to get a knowledge out of that data. It's something that is not that difficult because we have the opportunity right now to create a code to read data and then to interpret that data. And one thing that is really incredible about this technology is that people don't need to have enough knowledge about how to use these tools, because they can ask these tools how to use and how to program with these tools at the same time. For example, I want to share with you this part. For example, you can say, okay, so I need to have a code to use ChatGPT in Python in Jupyter Notebook to read a book and make a resume, is for example something like that, or to read a Twitter message and to get information out of this. So the program will guide me how to write the code. For example, here explain what things should I install in the system, how I will code the OpenAI, and then how I will resume this text, and finally I will get the results. So as you can see, the good thing about this technology is that I not need to be an expert in programming. I not need to be an expert in the use of a specific software, but I need to have a clear view of what I need so I can ask the artificial intelligence what I should do and then try that. For example, here the system gives me this code, then I try this code in Jupyter, and then this system will make the resume of a specific test. So we can apply right now generative AI to solve these type of problems about that 80% of data that is not used yet. Other example in how to use this technology in the supply chain is to analyze data from the market, pricing, conditions of the industry, and get to a best price plan. Because why is important to get to best price plan, because out of that price plan, we are going to develop a business plan that will be used by the supply chain to allocate resources in the system. So first thing, we can use all this technology in the strategic level. Now we are going to see how to use this technology in the supply chain, and how we can apply it. First thing, first, we have as the principal part of the supply chain, the sales and operation planning, or S&OP, where we have a clear picture of what we want to sell in the market. One thing that is always difficult for commercial and marketing departments is to try to do a good forecasting. Why? Because it's always tricky to try to see the future, and we have tons of statistical models to try to predict the future. The thing is, some companies don't have the technology to try to build to have those tools to try to forecast sales, and that makes those companies try to just guess the future, and they cannot forecast the future because they don't have enough tools and they don't understand how to use tools. Once again, we can use technology to ask the technology how we can forecast the future in maybe in a spreadsheet, and how we can write a software that help us to do that. I have an example of that I have built a complete S&OP system in an Excel spreadsheet that was really easy to do. I just asked the software to write me a code that helped me to forecast sales in the future. So companies that don't have enough technology to be competitive in the market against other companies that have access to technology, or have the enough people to implement tools right now, can use generative AI to get ahead in the market and start using technology like forecast models, things like that. So that is one important thing. Other thing that is important is dynamically discover of trade-offs. So one other thing that is difficult inside the supply chain is to understand, if we take a decision, how that will affect other parts of the supply chain. Most of the times, we have an operational blindness. That means that since we are too much time seeing the same problem, we don't understand everything in the problem, and probably we focus all the time our efforts just in one part of the problem. With the use of technology, we can ask the technology to generative AI if it can guide us to see other problems that we right now we are not seeing in the system. So it's another good important part to build the S&OP. And finally, in the S&OP, we can ensure that the plans that we are building, the sales plan plus the production plans, can be adjusted quickly, because we have right now the technology to check different scenarios in the system. After we have this idea on how we are going to do these things in the company, just give me a second. Okay. Once we know what we probably are going to sell, then we start building our production plan, our master schedule. And another way that we can apply generative AI is to define inventory levels. Why? Because the idea in the supply chain is not just to try to cover demand and try to respond to demand. The idea is to have a balance in the system, and to build this balance in the system, that means to react to demand, is to have enough inventory, but not too much, to can respond to the market, to our forecast plus possible variabilities that we could have. So when we build this master schedule, we can use generative AI to start analyzing our data and get to models that help us to define ideal inventory levels. Actually, we are doing right now this. We have used a couple of different inventory levels to save money to companies and allocate inventories in the correct way. So With this, we can get a recommendation for reorder points, how to reduce stock outs, excess inventory, and carry on costs that we normally have in the supply chain. That means that we can build a better supply chain that will help actually companies to be more competitive in market. Once we know what we can produce and what is not possible, then we go to build our master requirement plan. So the idea is not just to make a bill of material, just explode the information and then try to look if it's possible or not. The idea will be to try to analyze the data, different types of data that we can get to the market, so we can get different trends and deviations from information in the market. How we can do that? In that moment, we can use generative AI to try to interpret data, that 80% of data that we are normally are not using to build our supply chain models or our supply chain plans. So we can use right now that data and identify possible problems as soon as they arise and try to predict future problems in the procurement part and to see what could happen in the future due to this deviation in the market. So once again, this is a way to for applying generative AI in the supply chain. Once we have everything in place, then we go to the operation part and we try to apply all these ideas. Nevertheless, one thing is planning. That means trying to understand how demand works, try to see our sales and do a plan and demand shaping, try to shape the demand and plan everything. Another thing is actually when things get to the operational part. That means responding to demand. And here we always have a problems in all supply chains that most of the systems that we use in supply chains are ERP systems that are not designed to plan. Those systems are designed just to keep track of the information for accounting purpose, but not to plan and to try to replan and see new possibilities. One other difficult part in the supply chain when we talk about the operational side is that to get a software or system that can help us to plan the day-to-day business is not possible because each company is completely different. And for that reason, most of the companies that go to the market to try to offer a software for the supply chain, they don't offer systems that could help people to resolve this type of problems because each problem is different. If you want to get a solution for these problems, you probably need to contract a consultant to help you with this because most of the time people are in the problem instead of trying to check how to solve the problem. Right now, with the technology that we have, we can use the knowledge of our workers to build models and to try to automate to go to the automatization of those models, even if those people don't have a good knowledge on how to do it. Why? Because we can ask technology on how to do it. And other thing that is important about this in the supply chain is that we can start with really small models. For example, in a spreadsheet, we can build a model, then create the code in the same spreadsheet, asking the generative AI how we can improve this code or how we can build this code. And once we are sure that this code will work, we can escalate this to another system. That's something that really helps a lot to build things a lot faster. For example, I will show you here, we have here a model that is written in VBA. It's a VBA code for a worksheet in Microsoft Excel. And since we are sure that this model already is working and can help this organization, then we can ask the same system to change or translate this model to a different programming language, in this case, to Python. And then we can use that to escalate and try to solve bigger and bigger problems. So one good thing about the technology is that we can right now use all the programming power that we have available today, even if our workers don't have enough knowledge on how to do it. And right now, it doesn't need that the companies to invest a lot of money to get advantage of this. For example, things that we can use generative AI to solve problems are route optimization problems to reduce costs, resource use to define how much resources we are using or how much we should use, and dynamic routing, how we can change things inside the supply chain. And here is an example on how we can apply this in the supply chain. For example, we get a detection of an impact in the supply chain. The operative manager is presented with information by the AI from news, from Twitter, and from different information that are not structured information. So we get that information, and this person can get, or this group or person can get impact detection. Once they get that information, the system can contact suppliers and clients by automatic contact and generate message to try to get extra information to be sure if the impact is real or not. And right now, the systems can do that by themselves instead of having a group of people doing that. Once we get that information, but using Copilot working, humans plus AI can work together to gather data, analyze that data, and make graphics and resume to try to get analyzed and information about that data. Most of the times, companies get tons of information. However, they cannot use those information to take decisions because they don't have the ability to crunch all that data and transfer that data in information. Once we use generative AI and other AI tools, we have the opportunity to crunch that data a lot faster, apply different models, so people will have the opportunity to analyze and get information about that data. Once we get information about data, then it comes the fourth stage, that is decision suggestions. And once again, I come with this idea. Most of the time, people in the supply chain get this operational blindness because we see the same problem and we think that we can only solve the problem in one way. But with the use of generative AI, we can get new suggestions on how we can solve that problem. And that is a good advantage when the generative AI proposes a different solution. It's up to us to take that decision, but we get this. However, something that is important to have in mind, that 60% of all projects related with the use of technology, like in this case, artificial intelligence, of general AI, or different things related with technology, 60% of projects are being late or over budget. For example, with things related with blockchain in the supply chain, around 90% of projects go to failure, and that is only because we don't have a clear view how to use it. And the idea is to apply all this technology in the supply chain. We just need to follow 3 steps. And the idea of today was talk with you and explain you the 3 steps that we need to have in mind to apply this new technology in our supply chain. First thing is we need to have realistic expectation. We need to know and understand what type of organization we are, understanding our limitation, understanding that artificial intelligence will not replace people, actually will help people, but for that we need to understand what type of people we have in the organization, our learning curve, because we can have the technology but don't have the right people and the right places to use the technology. We need to understand that technology will, the idea is not to replace, is instead try to get this collaboration, human and AI collaboration, and that will help us to solve problems. And each company, each organization is different, so it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. For that reason, these new technologies will help us to improve and solve current problems, but we cannot like just generate one system and apply in all the countries. The second thing that, the second step that we need to have in mind in our companies is to examine the technologies that we currently have in companies, the opportunities that we have with those technologies, and other technologies we need, technologies that are needed to have in companies in order to use these tools. Most of the time, companies think that they just go to the market, buy new software, then try to install this software in the company, and that will solve everything. It's not like that. You need to have clear process. You need to have the correct data and the correct people. So there are things that we need to have in mind. And finally, control data quality and quantity. None of these technologies will help us to solve any problem if we don't have clean data, because then we will get in this process of garbage in, garbage out system, because if we don't have the enough quantity and quality of data, then we are going to have a huge problems. Even if we have a good data, other thing that we need to have in mind is how to transform and integrate all the data. In that way, different areas and different decision levels in the system will collaborate between each other. So the idea is to have a way to capture that data, transform, integrate, and share that data. So once we have all the data in the correct way, then we can transform data and information, and just information will help us to take better decisions in supply chain. Right now, as you can see, we have tons of data in the supply chain. Most of that data is not used. People don't know how to use it. Yeah. But the idea is to transport that data, integrate that data, and finally convert that in information that can help us to take decisions. One important thing is about generative AI is that it's helping us to reduce the difference between companies, because we always have those companies that have enough resources to get software and technology that will help them, and those companies that just cannot afford those technologies. With generative AI, we can level the field, so we can help companies and organizations that don't have access to expensive software to auto-generate their own solutions to tackle all the problems in the supply chain. So that was the idea of this topic and this conversation today to talk about how unlocking our supply chain efficiency with the use of generative AI and integration of technology. If you have any questions, I'm willing to try to answer those questions.
Santiago, very good presentation. I had worked in supply chain in Accenture in the reporting side, right? It is, we all know supply chain is one of the oldest verticals which has been using data for a long time. It has been analyzing data, it has been doing recommendations, and it is a very matured field, right? Banking, supply chain. When we talk about the traditional AI, analytics, and because it is data driven, we all know. just my question now, because now generative AI is it's a new stuff, right? It is more of like doing the creative stuffs. But I understand your presentation. You are now mentioning that these technologies are going to help make the traditional analytics more stronger and more better and more faster, right? The time to production and the time to make the, but when we are using these tools and we are in supply chain, we have multiple of stakeholders, right? We have so many suppliers, so many partners in place. And when we use these technologies, do you think there is some privacy issue that may happen, and it is not recommended to use Copilot and all those things, because at the end of the day, GitHub Copilot, Microsoft is controlling the data. And what are your thoughts on that front? Specifically for supply chain, I'm asking this because I know supply chain is very technically already, it has been there for a long time. The data has been there for a long time in that particular space. Thank you, Santiago.
Thanks. Okay, so I will try to explain about this. Since supply chains is data driven and is always generating a lot and a lot of information, even if you get the data from one company, that data will change in just 1 or 2 days. So I don't see a big issue about sharing the data in the supply chain, because you have one reality right now, and maybe in 1 or 2 weeks is completely different, because supply chain is confronting a lot of problems right now in the whole world due to different things. So data is always changing. One thing. The other thing is, when you use this system like a Copilot system, another system where you share your model and data, it doesn't mean that you need to share everything, because you can just share numbers. But if the group that is capturing all your data doesn't know what actually those numbers means, they cannot do anything with that data. For example, for optimization problems in operational research, you can use advanced systems like Cplex, Gurovia, and things like that are really, really expensive. Or you can use free servers like Neo server, where you can put your model in there. Then the server will solve that problem by using these optimization tools by free. But you can put a complex model with all your data from your company, but you don't need to put the names of the SKUs or the plants or warehouses. So you get your answer, but if someone tried to check the information, they will not get absolutely anything out of this. So I don't see a huge problem about that sharing data, because first, you can just share what you want to share. The other, you get inside your company, you reserve for your company. And the second thing is, since every time is changing, actually for tomorrow, it will be a different problem in the supply chain. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Are there any more questions? I think that's the end of our questions for Santiago. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for your presentation. It was really insightful.
Thanks a lot.